Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge that the Center for Student Development and Careers and UBC's Vancouver Point Grey campuses are situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. Today, you may be joining us from many places with many different histories, and you can learn more about the owners of the traditional lands at native-land.ca. You can find a link in the chat for that as well. You should be able to see a QR code and a link on your screen momentarily, and we'll have the link in the chat for you as well. Please take a moment to either follow the link or scan the QR code to check in and let us know you're here. It helps us a lot to know who's attending our events and to get surveys afterwards. My name is Amir. I'm an employer and alumni engagement advisor at the CSIC, and I'll be your moderator today. Whilst in our event space, I would like to remind everyone that all members of the UBC community are expected to uphold a respectful environment in which civility, diversity, opportunity, and inclusion are valued. For those of you who may not know, the Center for Student Development and Careers is home to UBC's Central Career Office and a resource for all UBC students. At the CSIC, you will find our Work Learn program, our career development coaches, virtual workshops, and online resources, as well as the employer and alumni engagement team who create opportunities to engage with employers and professionals through career fairs, employer info sessions, and our Careers Online job board. You can visit us in person at Brock Hall or through your account on Careers Online to learn more about our services. All of our participants are muted for the duration of the event, but feel free to turn on your camera. I think it'll be nice to see some of your faces as we go through the event. We'll have a Q&A opportunity in the second half of today's office hour. Some of you have already sent us your questions in advance, and I'll do my best to get to those questions as we start the Q&A. Everybody else is more than welcome to either send your questions in the chat once we start our Q&A, or raise your hand and I can unmute you so you can ask your question live during the event. We always love hearing from you, so I would say please do that once we get to the Q&A, and I'll let everybody know when we're there. I'm now happy to introduce today's speaker, Rotimi Ojo. Rotimi's journey in Canada started as an undergraduate in the Faculty of Arts program in 2016. To the pursuit of an enriching undergraduate experience in terrain unfamiliar to him, he curiously applied his skill set and personality towards a diversity of ventures and has had a budding career since then. From volunteer opportunities at student conferences and other campus events to 3 top-tier internships in the professional sports, banking, and tech industries, Rotimi tells a story of navigating the natural turbulence of personal and career development to emerge grounded in the pursuit of his dream. Now, Rotimi shares his story with the goal of supporting students and early career professionals to lean into their strengths and embrace the lows just as much as the highs in order to find fulfillment on a personal journey, which is daunting to many. He also offers career and life coaching to early professionals, aside to his career in talent acquisition at IBM. I will now give the floor to Rotimi. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Of course. Thanks, Amir, and thank you for the introduction. Hello, everyone. I will be honest, I'm taking a bit of a different approach than I'd anticipated with this office hours. I didn't want it to be too boring, too mundane, so I'm going to keep it conversational. My goal for this session is to really flow and just explain a bit about some of my past experiences, giving you some insight into some of the resources that have been helpful for me throughout my journey. So a bit of an introduction. As Amir said, my name is Rotimi. My full name is Oluwadirotimi, and actually means God stays with me. I'm in my culture. So I was raised in Nigeria and completed all my high school education in Nigeria prior to moving and enrolling in UBC in 2016. I'm pretty family oriented. So while in Nigeria, I'd spend a lot of time traveling to England and visiting family, visiting friends, prior to joining, of course. Now, I've outlined a couple of key themes that I'd like to discuss during our time here, one of which is community building. So really understanding the importance of your network. The second is trusting the process. So learning to lean on your strengths, focus on what's within your control, and leave whatever's outside of your control, outside of your frame of mind. The third is recognizing and unlocking hidden potential, hidden talents. So really being your own Christopher Columbus, like being explorative and really challenging yourself to find what it is that is unique to you and is your strength. And lastly, learning from potential failures and leaning into that again to create opportunities. So I'd love to just walk a bit through my time at UBC. One of the things that I was passionate about was building community. I joined, and with a very curious, open mindset, I was looking for different student clubs that I could be a part of. I was looking for different volunteer organizations that I could join. And for me, it really was a deep process of self-exploration. Coming from a completely different community, a different background, my goal was building a deeper understanding of what sorts of pockets within UBC existed, which communities could I join and tap into, who was I able to learn from? And it could be from something as simple as being in my first year, learning my way around campus, getting involved with the UBC Student Leadership Conference, getting involved with the UBC calendar. And it was really a wide range of opportunities that helped me in my journey. Towards the latter part of my degree, as I began to seek out professional development, one of the resources I took advantage of was the Arts Co-op program. For those who have the opportunity to complete an internship, I'd highly recommend it. Just pardon me, I'm going through a couple of my notes here. My first internship was with the Ottawa Senators, and it was a sales internship. My journey started as an aspiring neuroscientist, and then getting into an economics degree, and then getting into a sales internship with the Ottawa Senators. It was really exciting for several reasons. I remember on my first day, I was sitting in a boardroom with a couple of executives, and they were discussing the budgets for the upcoming year, which was in the millions. And to me, that's something that I just hadn't had any experience with prior. But beyond that, this internship experience really taught me about the transferability of some of the skills that I'd learned. I think oftentimes students tend to underestimate the value of experiences that they have, maybe because it comes from a volunteer organization or from an extracurricular. And we oftentimes might get caught in the loop of, I don't have work experience, so how exactly am I going to get hired? Or I only have work experience in these niche areas, so how am I able to transfer that into the professional world? My response to that and what I was able to do during my first couple of years to combat that was really just follow my passions. I think we oftentimes create a master plan of what we'd like to accomplish, the things that we'd like to achieve. And we think, I'm going to do this internship, it's going to lead me here, and it's going to take me there. But one thing that I've learned during my journey is really to embrace the non-linearity. Fun fact, I was actually admitted into UBC for the Faculty of Science, going off of an aspiration to become a neuroscientist. But based on, my grades in high school, particularly in chemistry and biology, I decided that wasn't a go for me. And then, of course, I decided I wanted to pursue an economics degree. And later on, I also wasn't really vibing with the courses I was taking and things of that nature. So really just follow your passions, follow your strengths, and don't be afraid to change course when you feel the need to. So my first internship with the Ottawa Senators was incredibly rewarding for several reasons. And it prompted me on a journey of seeking out future sales opportunities. I enjoyed the relationship building aspect of that internship, really applying my personality to the clients and getting a deeper understanding of their skills, what goals they had for their organization, and simply supporting them with that. So a couple of months after, I decided to interview or apply for future sales internships, and one that I came across was a role at IBM. I'd applied, I completed 3 rounds of screening, went through an extensive interview process. I got through to the final round, and I didn't end up getting the position. At the same time, I'd applied to internships at RBC. I'd applied to a number of startup organizations, and recruitment oftentimes is incredibly challenging. But one of the things that I was able to lean on throughout that time, again, is the importance of networking. During my internship at RBC, I was able to connect with our talent acquisition teams over there. It was a banking operations internship, but one of the things that I knew I enjoyed, again, was connecting with others, building relationships. And an opportunity came up during that internship to be a student partner. This was my first time where I got to work with our talent acquisition teams at RBC, organizing professional development opportunities for interns, organizing social networking events for interns. And that was a way that, you know, despite the failure of not getting into RBC the first time I interviewed, taking advantage of, you know, when the opportunity came, making it what was a rewarding experience for me. Towards the end of my internship with RBC, again, I knew that I wanted to get into sales. I knew that I wanted to get into the technology industry. And so I began networking with alumni from the internship program at IBM that I later completed. And that also was just a daunting journey and a daunting experience for me, because it's you know, the middle of the semester, I have a networking chat, and I connected with this individual who invited me to Toronto. He invited me to Toronto for a recruitment event simply based off of the conversations that I had with him and mentioning that he saw some potential. My initial response was a no, thinking to myself, I don't have the funds to travel across the city in the middle of the semester. It's a recruitment event. I'm not sure how much I want to invest in this if it's not even guaranteed that I'm getting the opportunity. I eventually bit the bullet, let's say, and flew over to Toronto, attended the recruitment event. I was able to eventually land the internship at IBM. I say all that to say, throughout your journey, and particularly throughout my journey, there's been lots of ups and downs. There's been lots of failures from the standpoint of internship experiences that I wanted to get, I was unsuccessful getting, communities on campus that I wanted to be involved in and sort of struggled adapting to different cultures. But the more I was able to really lean on my strengths, lean on my interest areas, lean on where I felt passionate about taking my career, the more I found I was able to find success. And I'd like to speak a little bit as well to the transition from an internship to a full-time role. While I was hopeful to secure a full-time role after my internship with IBM, I actually didn't. So that was, again, the next challenge that came up. I had to do recruitment in my final semester, and I was able to get my first full-time role at DocuSign, which is again in sales. However, I found during this experience that a full-time sales role and an internship sales role are quite different in terms of the metrics that were tracked during my role at DocuSign, in terms of the expectations with clients I was expected to reach out to 40 calls a day. And that soon became challenging for me, and just challenging in terms of the way I was able to take care of myself and mental health, let's say that. So I decided to resign from that opportunity at DocuSign. I didn't have any opportunities lined up ahead of me, but I knew that the role I was in at that time just simply wasn't working. And it wasn't working not because of the culture. I actually got to make a lot of friends during my time there, but I was no longer connected to the purpose and the passion behind what I was doing. So after resigning from DocuSign, I took a couple of months away from the work world. I spent time traveling. I spent time connecting with friends and family around the world. And as I started to think about what skills I had and where I'd like to take my career, that's when the idea of talent acquisition came about. During my internship with RBC, I'd mentioned working with the talent acquisition teams on side initiatives. During my internship with IBM, despite being a sales role, one of the extracurricular involvements during that internship was working with the campus recruitment committee. During my time at DocuSign, which also was a sales role, one of the things that I was interested in was diversity. So I was able to lean in and get involved with the diversity and recruitment board at DocuSign. So as I began to reflect on what skills I had and what experiences I felt would be valuable in advancing my career, I thought, okay, well, I enjoy connecting with students. I enjoy sharing a little bit more about my story. how about I seek out opportunities that allow me to do exactly that? I made a post on LinkedIn, and my former manager at IBM reached out to me, inviting me back to IBM. So that's a little bit about some of the experiences that took me from my undergraduate, really focused on extracurricular involvements, networking, to securing internships and getting a deeper understanding of what some of my strengths were, how I was able to apply that in the professional world, being unafraid to take risks. So for example, resigning from my job without anything ahead kind of planned, but ultimately learning to enjoy the process and lead into that self-exploration. So that's a little bit about what I could share in terms of an introduction. I'd like for us to go into a Q&A and maybe have a bit more of an open dialogue next.
Okay, thank you for sharing all of that. So we're at the Q&A. Like I said in the beginning, please feel free to turn on your camera if you like. It helps us on this side to see some of your faces. If you'd like to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand. I see there's one there already, so I'll get to you all in order. If you have a question that you want to send in the chat, you can also do that. And I have questions that have been sent here as well. So I think, Sari, you have a question. So I'm just going to unmute you. You can go ahead and unmute yourself on your end and ask your question.
Hi. So first, thank you for sharing your journey. It's actually really inspirational because I'm also in economics and I changed my major and also did some things in sales, but I want to move to marketing. So yeah, that's actually really comforting to know everything you said. And so I was wondering, because I'm currently in co-op, and if I do land a job, I was wondering, is there any advice you have for when we're doing the internships and everything? How can we do the best possible before we finish the internship? If that makes sense.
Of course. My biggest recommendation would be to focus on skills development. I think it's easy to go into an internship with a set idea of what you feel like you'd like to learn or the types of projects you'd like to be involved in. But if you're able to go in with an open mind, focus on building relationships with your team, which is very important, and the skills that you would like to develop during your time there. So during my internship with the Ottawa Senators, this was my very first internship. I didn't have an understanding of what the Canadian workplace looked like at the time. Neither did I have an understanding of what my career was going to look like. But simply by ensuring that I was being open and transparent with my management team. So sharing a little bit more about what my interests were. Like, hey, I'd like to get involved in projects where I get to visit the campus and talk to, student clubs. I'd like to develop my marketing skills. I'd like to develop my public speaking skills. And being open and transparent with the leaders that you're working with around that, I think it puts them in a better position to be able to support you.
Hey, that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Sari. Can we have another question? I believe from, I want to say Kadi. I hope I'm saying your name correctly. Is it Kadi?
Yeah, it's Kadi. Yeah.
Kadi, okay. I'm just going to spotlight you here and go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, thank you. First of all, thank you for your presentation. My question is, I'm in the process of, I guess, job hunting because I'm graduating soon and it's quite daunting. Like there's just so much uncertainty. So how are you able to persevere? And even when things didn't work out, you were able to keep pushing. Like what beliefs did you hold on to kind of not give up halfway through and not continuously feel discouraged if something didn't work out the way you wanted it to work out?
That's a great question. A lot of it was self-belief, and not necessarily self-belief, but really being focused with what it is that you're going after. So for example, in my experience, the first time I was turned down from an internship at RBC, I simply followed up with the recruiter, like several times, sending message after message. I want to work here. I want to work here. Are we able to have a conversation and discuss how my skills and capabilities are able to contribute to your organization? So if you're able to build a network of individuals that see the talent that you have, build a community in the professional world of people that are able to root for you, I think that will help advance your career. I'm not sure if that answers your question.
I think it does. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. I can see there's no more hands. If you have any other questions, again, type them in the chat, raise your hand. We'll get to that. I can jump into some of the questions that, oh, we have a hand. I'll go to those later. I see Ansh, I think, if you want to go first.
Yeah, I just want to ask, you mentioned that your mental health wasn't the best after your sales job. And I personally believe that you have to work on your mental health, just like when you go to the gym and you work on your physical health, like it's something that you actively work on to improve. And so do you have any specific tips to improve your mental health specifically after, like, for example, the job that you had, as well as any general tips that you would have for mental health, such as, I don't know, maybe meditation or journaling and stuff like that? Are you involved in those types of things, or yeah?
And my biggest recommendation around that would simply be understanding your rhythms. So we all have an internal rhythm that I believe guides us towards finding our areas of comfort and our areas of discomfort. For me, some of the practices that I've developed to aid in that self-discovery, as you mentioned, journaling, develops a daily journaling practice that just helps me clear my mind and be a little bit more grounded. Mindfulness is actually a practice that I developed during my first internship. So I'd moved to Ottawa from Vancouver just for that 4-month period, and being in a completely different community, being away from the UBC community, which I just recently joined, prompted a journey of, hey, like, what are you interested in? Like, who would you like to be? How would you like to spend your time? So also being unafraid to ask those big picture questions in order to better understand your internal rhythms, I think is helpful.
Yeah, I'm also practicing mindfulness, meditation, and journaling every day. So that's good to know that you also did that during university. I just want to know, do you still continue to do those things every single day, or is it more inconsistent now that you're more grown up and you don't really have to do those things on the daily?
Well, I think those practices are important regardless of the stage of your career that you're in. And if anything, the more advanced and the busier you might get in your career, I think the more important it is to establish those practices that help keep you grounded. For me, it's also about being able to maintain a balance professionally so that the work I'm expected to put up in the work world is of the right quality. And that's not to say that there aren't instances where your mental health affects the quality of work that you're able to put up. But again, building a strong relationship with your management where you're able to focus on relationship building with them, transparency, so they're also aware of what some of your tickers are. If you've gone through a challenging experience with family, or you have anxiety, or whatever the case may be, being open and transparent about those with leadership has proved to be helpful in aiding my journey too.
Thank you for that question. And this is a weird sentence to say, but as someone who's grown up, I'll put that in the quote marks here. Like you said, that doesn't change as you go through your career. If anything, things might just get tougher depending on work-life balance. So it's something that if you kind of discover that path of like mental health growth and taking care of yourself, it just keeps going. So it's not something that really changes too much, anyways, in my experience. So just wanted to put that out. Wade, you have your hand raised if you want to unmute and ask your question.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. First of all, thank you, Amir, for hosting, and thank you, Rotimi, for sharing your experience and your professional journey. I actually have two questions. First one is regarding kind of when you were job hunting. You mentioned that you originally came from Nigeria, as I assume as an international student, to Canada. Um, as far as I know, that a lot of the jobs in Canada, when they're recruiting, they give priority to Canadian citizens and permanent residents. So I was wondering if that was kind of part of what you experienced as well, and how, if so, how did you kind of navigate that? Kind of knowing that mentally you could be at a disadvantage, although you work really hard and you had all this experience, but you still could, like when you're competing with another person just because they're like Canadian residents or permanent resident, you could not get that job.
So to the best of my ability, I try to focus on what's within my control versus what's outside of my control. So during my first 2 years, as I mentioned, I really focused on extracurricular involvements. So what skills are applicable in the work world and what can I do to develop those skills? I volunteered for the UBC Student Leadership Conference, UBC Recreation. There are opportunities that I sought out for the sole purpose of having fun, and there were those that I sought out in order to develop the skills required to succeed in the work world. To your question about some of the biases that might be present in the recruitment process, personally, that wasn't a part of my experience, thankfully. And within IBM, for example, we don't prioritize Canadian citizens or PRs versus international students. Really, as long as you're eligible to be employed, then you're a candidate for the role. But I think it's also important to take into account that there's so many factors that could influence why a candidate doesn't get a job. The role could be canceled. They could be looking for a diverse candidate. And I find that now, in terms of the recruitment landscape, companies benefit more from hiring diverse talent than hiring individuals that are predominantly represented within these organizations. So for me, I focus more again on skills development and try to limit the perspective that I have of myself and allowing external factors influence sort of my personal processes.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That question I just came up recently for me because I was just looking at some of the job postings, and I realized that me also as an international student, I was just kind of, I was naturally I came to like think about, the sort of maybe the potential advantage that people who are born in Canada might have. But definitely I agree with what you just said, to focus on the present and what we have control over, and just kind of that's a really good mindset in my opinion as well. And if you don't mind, I'll just quickly ask my next question. So you mentioned about kind of one of your big ideas that you shared today is building community and sort of that like network that we have that support us. I was wondering how, like looking back, is there anything that you did that helped you to kind of keep in touch with your professional connections? And if you have any tips on, maintaining those kind of relationships, because whether it's people who you have worked with in the past, or people you just cold calling, or you reach out randomly on LinkedIn, maintaining those connections, in my opinion, is important. So I wonder if you could provide some input on that.
My biggest recommendation would be to focus on the quality of your network and not the quantity of your network. Earlier on during my undergrad, I would focus on just reaching out to as many people as possible. And you find that when you have an individual networking chat with, say, 10 to 15 people, the likelihood of you staying in touch with those 10 to 15 people is much harder than if you built a strong network of, say, 3 to 5 individuals in different organizations with a diversity of backgrounds and interests that are able to get to know you on a deeper level and really vouch for you. So when I approach community building, I'm really trying to get a deeper understanding of some of the shared values that I might have with that individual. And it varies based on, of course, the time and the place. So while I was on campus, it was more about which student clubs do I want to join. While I was at IBM doing my internship, there was something called an ERG, an employee resource group. And at that time, if I could get even a little bit more personal, I was going through a challenging time with my family and just navigating coming out to them at the time. So being able to connect with the employee resource group at IBM that was focused on the queer community and attending a virtual pride parade, for example, was a way that I was able to build community during a challenging time and rely on the network of those around me professionally to even help me through some of the personal challenges. So my big thing would be focus on shared values, and instead of thinking about the quantity of your network, really trying to identify 3 to 5 people that you believe could have your back versus 20 people that could say, oh yeah, like I spoke to him once and don't really remember much.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, thank you so much for your advice on that. That is all for my question.
Perfect. Thank you, Wade, for the questions. I believe, Ariba, you were next with your question. Ariba, see if you want to unmute.
Hi. So first of all, thank you so much for doing this, Amir and Rotimi. I'm a new grad. Your sharing right now is very useful for me and very essential in this journey. So firstly, I'm Ariba. I just graduated 2 weeks ago, and I'm international as well. And I did an arts degree in sociology. And I also want to sort of switch into more like customer facing or business development roles, not sales maybe in particular, but I'm open to all experiences. And I guess something that related to me was how you didn't sort of want to do exactly what you studied and how you kept adapting that and like networking to get what you want. I think in my head, we often think that you have to have, but from what you're saying, you did a lot of networking and you put out why you were best at the job and ended up receiving a few offers. How do I do that, you know, without like being confident that I have maybe 90% of what they're asking for? How do I network? How do I sort of project to the other person, a recruiter, just an alumni, or someone that, you know, I am capable of doing this?
That's a really great question. Let's see. I think from what I can share in my perspective, being able to understand your strengths and lean into your strengths, despite what the challenges are externally, is incredibly important. And that's when you start getting into resilience. An earlier question asked about, you know, how I managed in the face of rejection. And I think it's important to get used to rejection. I think it's important to get used to failure and understand that a key aspect of every single one of our journeys is thinking we can do it and maybe not doing it well, not thinking we can do it and finding out that we have the strengths within us to overcome the challenges that are ahead of us. So it's an interesting question, and I think if we connected one-on-one, I'd be able to go a little bit deeper into some recommendations that I might have and that have worked for me. But building your confidence, like building your confidence by getting involved in areas that you feel like you have strengths and you're passionate about, simply sharing. So when my approach to networking is focused on learning about some of the different opportunities and experiences that the person across the room from me has had. So what have you learned during an internship that you've had? What are you currently learning in your present role? What are some of the skills that your management team looks for? What are some of the projects that you work on? How have you been able to do that? The more I ask those questions, the more I also get an understanding of what I might need to do in order to get to the level that I would like to be at. So that's a little bit of my approach. And I hope that helped.
No, that was very insightful, and thank you so much. Everything you've shared so far has only been so positive and encouraging, and I just really want to thank you because it is very nerve-wracking to enter the workforce as a new grad. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your question, Ariba. And if I can add anything, as a fellow sociology graduate a few years ago, I won't say when, it's always tough to get out in the job market. I would say, especially with an arts degree, it's tough. It's not like an engineering degree or another job where you have a clear path ahead of you. So the advice that Rotimi is giving today is just, great. It's on point. You focus on that close network that you have. A lot of things come through practice and through, for me, what I found is continuous learning is the other thing that always helps. There's skills that you pick up in different jobs or different, courses or anywhere else in life that you may think is not valuable at all. And at some point, maybe in 8 years, maybe in 5 years, that might be the thing gets you a different job. I've come across that in my career. And I've seen many other people do the same thing. So continuous learning always helps. Anyway, I'll stop there, but I just wanted to add that in there. Thank you for your question. Okay, I think if we're going in order again, Caddy, is it you next?
Yeah, I think so too.
Perfect. I'll just spotlight you again.
Okay. So my question is slightly piggybacking off of Ariba's question. So for me personally, I feel like the past internships I've done have given me a skill set that I am confident in. My only thing is quantity wise, like in terms of showing your skills and showing that you can do this, would you say quantity is more valuable than quality from the perspective of a talent acquisition partner? When you're trying to recruit somebody, do you look more into, okay, this person has done a lot in this specific industry and would be somebody who most likely knows what they're doing and it's easier and be more likely to hire them? Or would you not really consider somebody who, although they have a skill set that could be potentially valuable, but they don't have an extensive experience working or experience in that industry?
Yeah, of course, that's a great question. As a recruiter, I focus on the individual's passion for whatever it is that they might be applying for. So say it's a sales internship, there's someone who's completed several sales internships and is applying, and there's another individual who has maybe retail sales experience. They worked at Hudson's Bay or they worked in retail banking. And they had extracurricular involvements on campus. That would be what I'm looking for. So I want you to think less in terms of, oh, I have this experience, but what have I learned during that experience? And the more you're able to demonstrate that, if on your resume, if during a conversation, the more the talent that is being sought after can be easily identified. Because it's also very easy to think, oh, like I did an internship here and there, and you're unable to effectively share your story with the person across the room. So they have an understanding of how you're able to give them value or give the organization value.
Okay.
So lean a little bit less on your experience. And that's something that's been a lesson for me, even in the way that I share my journey, but focus more on your learning. If you're completing courses on Udemy or Coursera to demonstrate that you're passionate about technology, that to me is great because it shows that during your free time, you're actually, looking for courses you could take to develop your technical skills. If you're the vice president of marketing for a student club, I'm like, okay, instead of going to classes and then going home, you're actually taking time out to invest in connecting with the community, developing skills in marketing. So really focus on demonstrating your passions would be my recommendation, and focus again on the skills that you've developed, what you've learned, and I think very importantly, how you're able to apply those lessons to offer value where it's being sought after.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, it's a great question.
Thank you again. Yeah, thank you for that question. I'm going to break the order for a second. So the only name I see here is YR. You had sent the question in the chat and now you have your hand raised. If you want to go next, that would be great. If you want to unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. Thank you. I want to ask, how do you select ideal candidate for some technology company like IBM? Are there any special rules that we can apply to our resume as an undergrad? Thank you.
Another great question. Ultimately, this will depend on the role that you're applying for. So say and that's the best and highest level answer that I could provide. It would depend on the role that you're applying for because different skills are required for success in different areas of the business. If I could give a recommendation as to what to focus on, it would be having a unique resume. So a resume that speaks to, say, your creativity. It could be like the color scheme of the resume and the way you format it so it stands out a little bit more. It could be, again, building a network of professionals within IBM. So you're able to, instead of simply pulling information from the job description, you're really pulling in more specific details that only an IBMer might be aware of. So the more you're able to demonstrate that inside knowledge of the organization or of the role that you're applying for, that stands out. One of the things that's a key deciding factor that I look for as well is your response to the question, why IBM? And take it away from IBM, but you can apply this to any organization that you're interviewing for. So what is your motive behind wanting to join that organization? Again, what do you feel like you're able to contribute to the organization? Do you have a solid understanding of what they're looking for? Very important as well. And that's where networking has come in handy for me, because prior to going into interviewing for a role, I reach out to interns that have worked there in addition to full-time employees. So that way I know, okay, they did this, and I could ask very specific questions that even throw off the interviewers. And they're like, wait, how did you know that? And I'm like, so that would be my recommendation.
Thank you for that question. That's a great trick and technique to bring into in an interview. It's funny because I've obviously been interviewed for jobs, but then I've also hired people. So on both sides, you kind of start to remember the people who left an impression, because you have so many interviews and you meet so many people, and it's usually the people who turn the interview around on you in a good way if you're interviewing someone and asking you direct questions or answering in a way that shows that research has been done. So I second that. That's definitely something that's been my experience as well. Okay, Sari, I think you are next if you want to unmute.
I'll just ask two quick questions because my class is going to start soon. So I was wondering, when you do networking with different people in the company or interns, what are some good questions you can ask them? That's my first question. And then second one, I was wondering if it's okay if we connect with you through LinkedIn.
Of course. So first, I'm more than happy to connect with anyone after this call. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. In terms of some of the networking questions that I ask, I focus on gaining a deeper understanding of what their role is. So what's their day-to-day like? How do they manage communications with their manager? How do they feel like they're able to embody and embrace who they are within the organization that they're working with? and I also ask questions that are based off of my interest. So I might reach out because I have some former experience in a similar industry. I see that we have some overlapping experiences. So I use that again as an opportunity to connect on a more personal level. So, hey, I have some experience working in professional sports, and I saw that you're currently with the Canucks or the Whitecaps. And then we're able to connect and bond a little bit over that mutually shared experience. So when I speak about connecting with people who you have shared values with and interests, oftentimes it's not very easy to identify this from the jump based off of a LinkedIn profile. But if you're also able to go in with a solid understanding of what you would like to learn, what are the things that come top of mind as you think of an organization that you would like to work at? Are you someone that cares more about the people? Are you someone that cares more about the independence and being able to work on your own timeline? And tailoring the questions so you're able to find most value from the interactions that you have as well. Because while many people might think there's like a formula that works, it's really dependent on the specific person as well.
Okay, I see. That's very helpful. Thank you very much. And it's very nice.
Thank you for the questions. Good luck with the class. I'm going to jump to the chat for a second and read a question that was sent here. So Priya, thank you for the question. So the question was regarding building that close network. How do you recommend finding people with those shared values and interests? Is it better to already know them, have worked with them, or is meeting someone through LinkedIn or at an event just as effective? So I think it's more about like cold contact versus someone you know, and how do you build that close network?
So one of the things I mentioned, looking for people with mutual experiences. So I'd always reach out to, say, someone with a similar professional background and focus on learning from them in that way. Your university alumni, your university network is also very important. So being able to see, hey, I saw you went to UBC, I'm currently in UBC, it tends to be a bit more of a warmer conversation. And for individuals that I have worked with, it's a bit different in terms of, you might learn more about this person from the work that you've done with them on a project. You might be inspired or maybe take note of their approach to solving a problem, which is a little bit different from yours. So my recommendation there would be to lean into your curiosity. I think when you're open-minded and again, focus on the learnings that you're able to obtain from each experience that you're involved in, the more you'd be able to identify, oh, I kind of like that. And I think I want more of that. I want more of this sort of open communication. I want more of learning in this kind of style or approach. So that would be my recommendation. And I hope that helps.
No, that's great advice. And I think the other piece is to also try to, networking can be a confusing term or could be kind of an intimidating term, but I think it's a perspective of looking at almost all interactions as one way of networking, because you don't know which opportunities can come out in the future from an interaction that you had in the past or a relationship you created. Again, something I've seen work for other people, for myself personally. So the saying of putting your best foot forward, I think, comes through when you're creating these professional relationships, because again, all of this is a network and all of it can have an impact for your future career, especially as you go along in your career path and 10 years past graduation and after that. and more longer after that. I'll stop aging myself here. Okay. Ansh, I think you are next with your question.
Yeah, so you mentioned that you got rejected at first and then you reapplied for one of the roles, and I'm in a sort of similar position right now where last job search, I did everything right for this one role. Like I networked, I went for 2 networking events, joined the LinkedIn groups, asked questions, followed up a bajillion times, and spent like an hour or like multiple hours on my cover letter, and I didn't get the job. And now I'm going to be applying for summer roles, and they are coming up with internships soon. And I just wanted to know if you have any tips for this specific scenario that I'm in, because it's sort of like what the feeling that I walked away with after that rejection was they just don't want me, because I couldn't have showed more interest. Like it wouldn't have been possible for me to be like, I really want this job, you know? So do you have any tips regarding that?
Of course, I think you actually just identified exactly what needs to be adjusted, and that would be your frame of mind after receiving that rejection. So the first time I interviewed at RBC, I didn't get it. My frame of mind, despite being disappointed, was they're gonna hire me. And I wasn't saying that because I was so confident I was going to get the role. I'm saying that because I knew how badly I wanted to join that organization, and I knew that I was going to do whatever I was able to in terms of networking and building that skill set in order to demonstrate why I'm a strong candidate for the role. And maybe I could give some more actionable steps that could work for you. Reach out to the people that interviewed you, and don't do it the week after or 2 weeks after. Actually give it maybe 3 to 4 months. Give it enough time that you're able to say, hey, I was really interested in this position, and within the past 4 months that have passed since my time interviewing, these are some of the things that I've done. These are some of the skills that I developed. That's the approach I took when applying for my IBM internship. I inquired about the previous intern who was hired and asked for a deeper understanding of what some of their responsibilities were. I mentioned, hey, within the past couple of months, this is the internship I completed. These are some of the things I learned. I shared, this is some of the feedback that I took back from my interview a couple of months ago, and this is what I've done to improve upon that feedback. So I think that's what needs to be adjusted, because I'm a firm believer that if you get to the final round of an interview, much less you're contacted by an organization, you have the skills to do the role. They're interested in your potential to succeed in that organization. And there's so many factors that come into play with you not getting a role. But again, don't neglect the amount of work that you've already put in, but use that to build momentum to, again, further demonstrate why you're the right fit for that position. It's daunting. It's not necessarily the most fun process, because you're also, banking on getting an internship and you hope things go according to plan. But I will say it's a natural part of the journey.
Yeah, that helps. Thank you so much. Yeah, I got to rush to class too, but thank you so much for your time. And I've already connected with you through LinkedIn, and I'll be following up with our conversation.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thanks for the questions. We have 3 more hands raised. We're coming up to time, so we'll just make these the last 3 questions, and I'll just go in order. So Ariba, if you want to go with your question.
So the point that you shared and that where you said that you value experience and extracurriculars, and you don't just look for like quantity of experience, like internships after internships, for someone who's not enrolled in co-op. That's very nice to hear, because I have a lot of experience, but it's not an internship through co-op. And the second thing I wanted to ask in relation to that is, so I saw a lot of positions open for IBM, for example, the entry-level consultant or an entry-level position. So for those positions, would people from all backgrounds be considered then? Like people who do have extracurriculars, like new grads, would we be like, would there be a possibility that we're a good fit for the role despite not having similar internships or quantity of experience in the past?
The short answer is 100%. So again, I've screened candidates, and maybe they've been involved with a management consulting club in the university, and maybe they're a volunteer for a nonprofit where they work on consulting initiatives. And on their resume, they show that they've taken some additional work with a professor and really gotten involved in consulting in that aspect. The point I'm trying to drive across is that there's so many areas that you can lean into to develop your skills outside of the professional workplace. And the more you're able to really trust that the lessons that you learn and the skills that you develop during those experiences are transferable, the more you're able to, again, demonstrate why you're a strong fit for the role, because it's not about the organization that you worked for or what you did at X time. Again, it's about your ability to continuously learn. You know, we're not hiring your experience, we're hiring you as an individual. So really leaning into that. And I think, again, it's a process, even understanding how to communicate and share those strengths, but really leaning into what you believe you're able to offer that no one else can. Because ultimately, we all have that it factor. So it's more about discovering that for yourself and leaning into that.
Yeah. Just a small follow-up. So the fact that you said continuous learning and just like sort of show that to your recruiter or to the person you're networking with, would something like, oh, I'm actively learning about cloud computing, even though I'm from an arts background, and I am like taking the steps to learn everything that is required for this job, and I really am doing it because I'm also interested in it. Would that, like, expressing these things to a recruiter in a conversation, do these add to these take away from, you know, your strengths as a candidate?
They 100% add, because again, for example, I'm not someone who has technical skills, and there's going to be many individuals that are applying to IBM without a technical background. But if you're able to say, I'm currently enrolled in this cloud certification on Udemy, I'm enrolled in an intro to Python course because I'd like to learn a bit more about coding. It shows that you have the mindset that's required for success, because ultimately most of the skills that are required in order to do the job are going to be taught to you. And you're going to learn that from experience while working within the organization that you join. So being able to say, you know, I understand technical skills are a priority to IBM because X. This is what I'm currently doing to advance my technical skills. I'm enrolled in online certifications. I'm networking with technical folks and taking, you know, these additional courses on Python. I think that that shows that you're willing to do the work to get to where you'd like to be.
Perfect. Thank you for that question,
Awesome.
Ariba. I'm going to go to James. I know, James, you had your hand raised and then you just unraised it. I don't know if your question was answered or not, but if you want to jump in quickly.
Oh, yeah, I'll just jump in quickly. I would like to ask you about overcoming imposter syndrome, and also one connected to that, how you overcame doubt, you know, after failure.
Ooh, overcoming imposter syndrome. I think, again, we all have our internal battles that play a role in sort of creating distance between us and what we'd like to accomplish. So you might think to yourself, I want to work at IBM, but I don't have this. Or I want to be a public speaker, but I don't have that. The first step, in my opinion, is identifying what that but is, because only you can say what the blocker is between you and your future self or the things that you aspire to accomplish. So that's one. And the second bit about overcoming doubt and how networking has been of support to me is understanding that I'm not the only one with the experiences that I've had. You know, during this call, we learned of someone else who's gone through to their final round interview, really thought they were going to get the job and they didn't get it. So connecting to others and understanding that, hey, it happens. Like sometimes we think we know all the answers and we're exactly the one. We might get a rude awakening that we're not, and that's also okay. So don't trust the process also means just allowing the process unfold and taking your time as you progress throughout your journey, because it's yours.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. Before we go to our last one, just a quick yes or no. I know students ask this all the time. Does IBM use an applicant tracking system or no in the process of applying for a job?
The answer is yes, but not in the way that I think many people might understand it. So you have an applicant tracking system, which means every application that comes in is screened by a recruiter, and our applicant tracking system simply houses all of the applications that we receive.
Okay.
Every application is screened by a recruiter. We do not have sort of an automated resume screen and then disposition. No, every application is screened by a recruiter.
Okay, great. We have our last question. I think you have your hand still raised. I'm just going to spotlight you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Timmy. It's really nice to finally meet you, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, others have already asked so many excellent questions, and I don't really have any other questions. But I just want to personally say thank you for your continuous support through my hiring process. And yeah, I was talking to my hiring manager yesterday, and I look forward to joining IBM in the summer.
Of course, I'll be in touch.
I'm just gonna say, we didn't plant you in the audience. You just showed up naturally here. It's not our job.
Sorry, I was thinking like maybe in the end I was like, okay, just ask to like say something. Yeah, but thank you.
Of course.
Perfect. Thanks for that. Amazing. I didn't get to go through a single question that was sent in advance. A lot of it was still asked here. So thank you everybody for just participating and asking questions. I want to end it with this. We usually end our office hours with this question before we go away. Rotimi, if you wanted students to walk away today with one thing from this office hour, what would that be?
You have the experiences that you're looking for. You have the skills, you have the talent that is required in order to succeed. So do not underestimate the value of the experiences because of where you're from, because of where those experiences come from. Really focus on learning, focus on embracing every aspect of your journey, because the lessons you learn are going to come in handy at some point. Even when it's unclear what you're supposed to be learning at a given time, just trust the process and believe in yourself.
We'll end it on that nice, lovely, positive perspective. Thank you for everybody for being here with us this afternoon, for asking questions. Rotimi, thank you so much for your time, for being so open and transparent and sharing your experiences. Everybody, we're going to send you a little link in the chat. It would be amazing if you could, or scan the QR on screen. It would be amazing if you could just use that as we have a survey at the end to let us know what you thought, what you want to look for in the future for other events. It helps us with organizing everything else that we do. And that's it. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful evening and hopefully see you in future events.
Thanks, everyone.